Welcome to Pod and Deliver. Today we're reviewing the book Beyond Order by Jordan Peterson, 12 More Rules for Life. Joining us today is Cris, our brother, Cris Aguilar. Welcome, Cris.
How are you guys doing tonight?
Doing pretty good. Pretty good. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, so this book is a follow-up to his 12 Rules for Life, an antidote to chaos, and this is more chaos. Or I guess this is for people who are in it or at least want to avoid it. And so it's good.
Yeah.
I'll say it first. It's pretty good.
I want to say I like it more than the first book. I know that sounds weird, but there's aspects of it I like. I should say I like it more because it's kind of a continuation, but I do. I enjoyed it. I don't know. How do you feel, Cris?
No, not so far, not nearly as much. I feel like at least the first two chapters, he went all around the point, and I feel like he could have cut out about half of what he said and made better points. I felt like I got lost a little bit. Although the essence of what he's saying is great, but I had to kind of go back and reread and re-listen to what he was saying. But yeah, overall, it's good, but I like the first book better. So far.
That's fair.
I would agree with you, Cris. However, my experience is a little bit different on this one because this one I'm listening to it, and you have to really stop at times and focus, and write some stuff down. At least for me, my attention span sometimes will get lost. Yeah. But are you guys all? What platform are you reading it?
I usually listen, although this time I'm reading it because of just what you just said, Ruben. That I find myself having to go back. So and I guess Cris is correct, and it's a little more difficult. But I guess I've enjoyed the complexity of it, just trying to figure it out. And so, but for the first two chapters especially, I think it gets a little bit more easier as the third chapter comes on. But yeah, I've used this time it's Kindle for me.
Well, let's start with Cris. Yeah, were you going to say, Cris?
Oh, I do audiobook 100% last couple of years. Although I do download the Kindle summaries sometimes, just to make sure I'm on track on something if it's needed. And this book definitely needed it.
Sure.
Well, let's start with you, Cris. What rule would you say was your preference?
I'd say I think it's Rule 4, which was you're asking what chapter I liked, right?
Yes.
So what I think it's Rule 4, which is don't do what you hate. I think that's how you say it. Is that what it was?
No.
Oh.
I think it's number 5.
Oh, 5. So that's 5. So I got the chapter wrong there. Don't do what you hate. I think having met quite a few people, and even in my own life at times, having to do work and being in positions of doing things that you just hate, that doesn't make any sense. Although it could look like a contradiction to, I think it's Rule 1 of this book, that it's actually a good thing to start at the bottom and that you have to keep going. But I think overall in Rule 5 saying, don't do what you hate is, why are you leaving yourself in a position where you hate life, especially if you're doing that 8+ hours a day. So definitely like that chapter. Yeah. Did you guys like that one?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a psychological thing, isn't it, Cris? When you do things that, you get in the middle of it, wherever, if it's job or if it's school, you get in the middle of just doing things that you hate because you feel like you have to do them. And I think Jordan Peterson does that quite a bit in the book. He kind of lets people off the hook, I think, in feeling you have to do certain things, right? And maybe he got, because, you know, he wrote this book while he was sick, which to me blows my mind away. So I'm thinking he's going back to it. He goes a lot back to themes like gratitude and humility, but I think he also is going back to, hey, you know what? Why are you making life so difficult for yourself? You don't have to do that. Don't do things that you hate, right? I mean, do you agree with that, Cris? I mean, do you see that?
Well, yeah, especially because I think he's Canadian, right?
Yeah.
In Canada and America, at least, we have the privilege of having won basically like the human lotto. We have, I mean, we're not doing crazy difficult things by force anymore. So we could pretty much choose what we want to do. Not 100%, you know, we can't just snap our fingers and do 100% of what we want to do, but we could do, we definitely don't have to do things that we hate. So like, let's say we hate manual labor and we want to go to school so we could get out of that, or vice versa. We hate being in an office and we'd rather be out in the field or in a construction type job. Why would you you know, do the drudgery of that work if you hate it? It just doesn't make any sense, because we almost everyone could just choose to do what they want. And having interviewed thousands of people in the past, there's so many people that are just doing whatever they have to do because their parents want them to do it or whatever. So yeah,
or they feel like financially they have to, and they're stuck to that, right? But no, you don't have to.
Yeah, that's true. Well, people enslave themselves to their bills. They enslave themselves to their lifestyle, and instead of cutting way back and then making a shift, they get stuck on doing that, whatever that 9 to 5 is that sucks, you know. And that would be a horrible life.
Very good. That's a good chapter. Do not do what you hate. There's also a pretty good quote in there about the responsibility you have, even if you're just a small part of something, a cog in the machine. The minimum requirement then, you don't even have to speak out, just don't do what you hate. So it's a good chapter.
I think that's even to start with. Even that might be a starting piece, right? And then you grow to take bigger steps to not do things that you hate. Yeah, good point. That's a good quote. Ruben, is it my turn to share my favorite? I'm just excited. Can I share my favorite chapter?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you. Hey, chapter 3. The title is. He always has these interesting titles, right? Do not hide unwanted things in the fog. And I that even that chapter's title kind of just grabbed me. But it basically deals with exactly what the title says. You know, sometimes we as humans, we don't want to confront situations. He has a great little story about his father and mother-in-law, how for many years, for 20 years, he did not like having his lunch on a small platter. He wanted to have his sandwich on a bigger platter for whatever reason. And he let it go for 20 years. But Jordan Peterson says, you know what, first that was kind of a funny little story in the family, but you know what, later on he thought about it. Say, you know what, hey, he should have spoke up. How many days is 20 years? Because he went at lunch, for work at lunch, he would go home and have lunch with his wife. And he said, that is hundreds of thousands of days, right? And so that made him unhappy. Whatever reason why it made him unhappy. That's just one item. Can you imagine in marriage, there's several items that sometimes we just let go. We go, well, I don't want to have a fight. I don't want to have a disagreement. But if it really nags at you, sometimes those things add up and end in divorce. And so it just kind of convicted me thinking, oh, what are some things that I have kept silent about? And it was a really good mirror in the face type of thing for me to even think about, even in the past when I kept things quiet. And then when I reveal things, things are much better. He talks about later in the chapter that sometimes we just get scared of the possibility of what's going to happen when we reveal our true feelings. And that sometimes that's a bigger monster than it really is. Sometimes we've created this monster in our head. And then when we share the truth to our loved one or the people we need to talk to, we find out, it was not even anything to worry about. Or even if it was, at least we brought up the truth and we dealt with it. So I don't know. I like that that chapter. I have a quote though from that I really liked. I want to share with you guys. He says, "Do not pretend you are happy with something if you're not, and if a reasonable solution might, in principle, be negotiated." So he says, "Have the damn fight. If you have, just do it." So anyway, I appreciated that. And that was one of my favorite chapters.
And just for clarity, oh, go ahead, Cris.
Well, yeah, I think once again, it can contradict other things that he says, like, well, specifically on that quote that you said, Jake, it's like, if there's a reasonable way to solve that problem, because sometimes you have, let's say he didn't like that platter. He didn't like that little saucer plate that she served him on. And it's such a minor thing, but it, added up to so many days. But let's say the wife had a really good reason for doing it. So she had her point of view. He had his point of view. They had a big fight about it, which is, I think his point is to at least talk about it, at least discuss it, because he never discussed it. He never expressed his feelings about it. Yeah. But there are a lot of things in life that you have to just say, okay, I've already expressed myself. I've already told the other person, here's where I'm at, but this other person and I disagree. Okay, one of us has to compromise. Yeah. And you have to be willing, I think, to compromise on that, and then let it go if you're willing to compromise on it, and not harbor it. So I like the idea, but I also don't think there could be an extreme to that where you're not really being true to yourself or true to the relationship of compromise, because that's what a good relationship is often doing. Yeah, I mean, it's funny you said, because he didn't really talk about it in this chapter about that, but you're right. I mean, once you deal with it, then that's a different story, right? And you have to deal with your history with that person you're talking to. Maybe you have to. There might have to be a situation where you depart, right? That's a whole big box of I don't say worms, but another issue. But yeah,
it was in this chapter that he described the confrontation. The verbiage he used was really strong, because at least for me, there's been this issue of how do you confront somebody? And he says, imagine two people, one of whom is feeling ignored in the relationship. And so the person's confronting, I feel ignored in this relationship, but I'm not sure if I'm imagining it. And so I really like that, because it voices the concern, but also allows for to be corrected or to be challenged, because they could be wrong.
Yeah, because you could be accusing that person, right? But realizing, wait a minute, no, it's in my head, and the other person will go, no, come on. I mean, by going that way, you're saying probably, hey, you're avoiding a bigger fight, right?
Well, it's not. I didn't take it as a manipulative ploy. I think it really is. You really should go in being willing to change your mind.
Oh yeah,
that you could be wrong.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a different mindset, right? And I think some people really. I think in life we sometimes have these imaginary dragons in our head, and we just don't want to confront it. And once we do things. And if we're doing it like the way you're saying it, Ruben, in that example, if we do it in that way, wow, we're bringing some peace in that relationship. I think, or at least we're saying it in a peaceful way.
Okay, so I am going to ask you both what's your main takeaway, either as a teacher or as a parent. You could answer it either way. I know, Cris, sometimes you teach, so you could answer it through that lens as well. But I'm gonna go for chapter 4, rule 4, which is notice that opportunity lurks where responsibility has been abdicated. So, I mean, he gets heavy into mythology here, and you really have to stop and listen and click the 30-second thing, and then click it again. At least I did. There's a moment where he describes the queen of the underworld. I know her as Proserpina, the Greek goddess, but he uses the Roman one, and I'm too lazy to look at what the name of the queen of the underworld, but she's the goddess of chaos and the force, but also the force that eternally renews. And he writes that, so it's both, it's chaos and the force that renews. And he writes that, thus, even when it is the darkest, new opportunities make themselves manifest. So in the worst case scenario, when all is lost, where is the opportunity here? And that takes a real mature person to think that through. But there's a reason that God is both things, chaos and opportunity. So it was a really nice thing there. And that's the same chapter where he talks about chess and how the queen, how the different players' pieces move a different way. There's those limitations, but when you accept the limitations, that's when the game begins. That's when the fun starts in life as well as in the game. So I think there's some good things there.
See that for the classroom, you see that's how do you portray that like in a regular day, like in a class?
Well, for me, it's real easy because I teach English. Okay. So I teach Greek mythology. I mean, not so much this year, but so I could bring that idea up and go more into detail about that, but also talk to students about the daily struggles of being a teenager, and what opportunities are manifest within that chaos or struggle. And to say it out loud, I'm really into this idea of speaking it, and because it holds into them, it stays with them longer to speak it. So, okay. Well, I guess I answered my question of the teacher one. Yeah. And so you asked me, so we eliminated me, so that's good. But did you have something else before I go to the next part?
No, I was just share for myself regarding as a teacher. I mean, there are a lot of things that you could pull from this because there's such great nuggets to instill in your life. But in chapter 1, the title was "Do Not Carelessly Denigrate Social Institutions or Creative Achievement." And there's a piece in that chapter dealing with authority, right? And also power. And sometimes there's a difference between the two he talks about, right? He says, you know what? People of authority are there looking out for the people who are under them. He always goes back to the hierarchy, right? And there's in life, in the workplace, there's a hierarchy. There just is. And you're going to work with the people above you, the people below you, and then it's a great idea to work with people who are your colleagues. And so, but if you're in an authority situation, it's not about showing your power and pushing that finger. And it reminds me that we're teachers. I know Ruben and I, and Cris is a parent, and that we have to remember that, hey, we're in a position to make sure we are looking out for our kids, looking out for our students, and also be that example. Because when they're looking at us. I just talked to a student who's 24 years old today. She was telling me she was working as like an aide to a class. She came and talked to me, and she said, you know what, I really enjoyed our conversations because you never pointed a finger at me. You never, scolded me like that in front of people. And you didn't let me feel like I was a nothing and you were the teacher, And so I think that's a reminder for me is to, hey, yes, I'm in an authority position, but I don't have to lord it over them, right? To show them that hey, you're the student, I'm the teacher, and you better listen to me, right? It's like, hey, you know what? Let's work together. Let's try to find a solution here. Let's look at what are the possibilities, what we could do here. And so I think that's just something to remember. There's a little nugget that I pulled out from chapter 1. There's so much, as we refer to. Chapter 1 and 2 is really kind of like, because he goes into mythology, he goes into Harry Potter, he loves Disney, he goes into biblical stories, right? I mean, it's like he gives example after example, and you're like, whoa, yeah. So,
yeah, and then I actually love that he does all that, but then he I guess he makes his points pretty simply, like in chapter 4, I think in the beginning of that chapter, he makes a point that you should make yourself invaluable. And so with an employer as an example, or a teacher, if you had a student come to you And what I taught many times in my how to find and keep a job type classes and other kind of classes like that, which is how do you get your, like, let's say you get your boss to absolutely need you and keep you and give you raises and all this stuff, is to find the things in that job that no one wants to do, or that they hate to do, or they, everyone's just running from, and you become the expert in that. And you become the go-to guy or go-to girl on that issue or on that project. And so I love that he always does make it pretty practical.
Yeah.
And he's giving lots of reasons on how he came up to these ideas, but then it's pretty practical. I mean, it's something that you can actually live out.
Yeah.
So
he describes that as start by attacking the dragon you're capable of defeating.
Yeah.
Because if you try to take it on at one fell swoop, one big monster, it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
But what can you do? You're saying, and then eventually you're going to be very, very valuable.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that chapter. It just you could just. I was thinking about how do I instill this into my sons, because my older son is looking for a job. Actually, he just got hired in a position at a restaurant, and I'm like, wow, these are things that I want to hopefully instill in him that say, hey, why don't you look, if you really want to get promoted, why don't you find things that people are complaining about, don't want to do? And then even if your bosses are, not, I don't want to say clueless, but maybe they're not responsible, you could at least do what you're supposed to be doing, and then some, and then someone's going to notice, and good things will happen. But, Ruben, you didn't mention the chapter you liked. I think Cris and
I did. Chapter 4.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Chapter 4. That's correct.
So there's 2 chapters, 2 rules that we didn't mention, and I thought I would read them. It's rule number 2, imagine who you could be. Sorry, I'm going to rephrase that. Imagine who you could be, and then aim single-mindedly at that. And then chapter 6, abandon ideology. So any takers?
The second chapter, at least for me, I like that chapter because, again, he gives a lot of examples of, he basically says you should be the hero in your story, right? And what is it going to take? There's going to be some dragons in your life. There's going to be some monsters. There's going to be some things that are going to be tough. But are you willing to go through that? And be willing to, because point to what you want and go for it, right? That's what he's saying. And but be aware, because then he shared some examples of like Harry Potter, how he had a goal and he knew what he had to do, and he took care of whatever, damsel he had to, grab and to save. But what is yours? What is the thing that you want in life? And then find it and go for it, right?
I do want to point out, though, that he doesn't just talk about what you want, because the metaphor of J.K. Rowling, it's ironic because it's a lot of Christians sort of dumped on Harry Potter, but here he compares Harry Potter to Christ-centered theology. He says, the soul willing to transform as much as possible is most effective against totalitarianism, is the message of both J.K. Rowling and Christianity. So he does talk about the stand against totalitarian thought. So
but I guess my main point, though, I understand that which is wonderful. But my point was that, hey, if you have a goal, if you're whatever your goal is, stick to it, right, and go forward with it. Don't be the hero of your story, like he would say.
Right. I'm just saying we've been talking a lot about that, about our personal goals and things like. But he spends a good part of people, and I feel like we have to at least address it at some point. Yeah. Because the whole chapter 6, is about ideology. Yes. So he does. I think people who read this would say, "Wait a minute, they didn't talk about that part." He does talk about that, and so again, the soul willing to transform itself completely is most effective against the totalitarian rule. And then we got chapter 6, abandon ideology. I have a quote. Maybe I shouldn't read it. So it's so charged.
Go for it.
In Demons, Dostoevsky, I'll get it right, could see the adoption of a rigid, comprehensive, utopian ideology predicated on a few self-evident axioms presented a political and spiritual danger with the potential to far exceed in brutality all that had occurred in the religious, monarchical, or even pagan past. So,
So
ideology,
for my sake, Ruben, put that in English for us.
so basically, if you have a clipped saying that encompasses a very complex system, like how do you handle political issues like the environment, feminism, things that need a lot of that deal with a lot of complex thought, and you're just addressing it in a few clipped sentences like axioms. The danger, according to Dostoevsky's book, he called it the demons of ideology, is that you're creating possibly a more totalitarian, brutal system that would far exceed any kind of past Christian or monarchy that's ever come to pass. Now, he's quoting Dostoevsky, and I think it's a good point.
And I think, do you think it's a good point because relating it to today with even the political parties and the intolerance for each other, and when they hit a topic, they just kind of touch on it. They don't really grapple with it. They don't look at all the sides of it, because if you do, so maybe something good will happen. Yes,
and if you don't follow it the way we're explaining it in this axiom, then you're not pure enough. Right. I just finished reviewing The True Believer, which takes this idea that people who are married to ideology, it's very similar to people who are religious.
Oh yeah.
And they will go down to their deaths for it, and even kill for it. It becomes very dangerous. So it's pretty apropos for the book I just read. So
it goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
You're gonna say something, Cris? I'm sorry.
Nope, listening.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think that's kind of, it's cool ending for our first 6 chapters, because I know for me, I've been really struggling with that, looking at the political parties and saying, I don't want that to become my religion, and I could easily point at people I know, friends, and say, hey, look at that, they'd die for that. I'm like, wait a minute, where am I? And I really can't find hope and security in a political party. I don't. Because, like you shared, Ruben, I don't know any party who really looks at a topic and at an issue and really just dives into it and says, how can we solve this together as a country or as a community and go forward with it? I don't see any party doing that. And any issue that's you could just name any issue that's up there right now with even with race and so forth. So
let's hear from Cris in terms of how what maybe a takeaway you get as a parent or even as a teacher, or however you walk away with this. Anything in particular?
Yeah, definitely. Once again, the overall book, as far as my takeaway is, probably in a nutshell, is, he goes in deep, as you guys mentioned, on some things, but I love, once again, that he can get to some real practical things. Even on this subject right here at the end, he mentions in the first chapter how even our psyche, even our mindset can get really dark real fast if we are working on problems that we have no business really working on. We're not either educated on it, we're not exposed to it, we're just hearing the headlines, or we're hearing the little snapshots. And so, as a small example, as Jake has mentioned, becoming the hero of your own story. So therefore, really being practical with your life and saying, what is it that I want to be working on? What am I going to be great at? What am I going to be working on? I think Peterson in the first book and the second one is constantly pointing at what can I do with my life? How am I moving forward? So love that about it.
Yeah. Good.
Well, this has been good, and it's only part one.
What?
Next week, we will cover the second half, the second of the 12 rules, and we hope you join us. Thank you for joining us, Cris.
Thank you, Cris.
Yeah.
And we'll see you next time on Pod and Deliver. Goodbye.